Our next agenda item is 9.04, 2021-2022 school year planning update. I believe Ms. Glimmy will start.
That's me. Yes, I'm gonna share my screen. So we've talked about this spring, and we've talked about the summer now, and now we're going to move into the 21-22 school year. So really chronologically following through this. So I'm going to share my screen, and Dr. Nickerson, can you see the presentation? Okay, great. So oops. All right. Let me see I'm sorry, just give me 1 second. Something is off with my screen. Here we go. So just to give you a quick presentation overview, what I will cover through is just very briefly our goals for the fall of and all of the year of 2021-22, and then specifically how we're proposing to run the comprehensive school sites, starting with the fall of 21, and then our proposal for the alternative education, which is our Acalanes for Center for Independent Study, and a new proposed virtual academy that we are proposing to run specifically during next school year under the umbrella of alternative education. And then just some fall 21 planning and the next steps. So with that, our goals for the fall of 21, our number one goal is to open up all of our schools for in-person instruction with the traditional Acalanes schedule. And we're not talking about the current day schedule, but the schedule that's pre-pandemic with 5 days, 1 anchor day and 4 block days. We are anticipating that there may be possible minor adjustments to that schedule should there be a need, maybe with some lunchtime or some implementation of CDPH guidelines, and I'll cover that in just a minute. We want to make sure and provide an alternative option to that in-person schedule to the students who are unable to attend in-person instruction due to medical reasons. And so we want to offer a full remote option. And then we want to provide and ensure that our students with academic and mental health supports in all of our schools, and that's in full remote and in person, to ensure successful transition and progress in all of the schools and programs. We have received input from our stakeholders, and that input demonstrates overwhelming support for the proposed plan. We have had some expressed reservations due to the unknown with the public health. There are some unknowns with regards to the vaccine rates. We know that the vaccines, students 16 and above and older are eligible, but we do not anticipate that students younger than 16 would be eligible. So there are just some unknowns with the public health, so there are some parents that have expressed some reservations, but overwhelmingly the support for the plan as proposed has been really positive. And also our proposed plan is based on, we're assuming the continuation of current public trends out there with vaccinations and rates that we're seeing and so on. So I'm going to jump in right away into our comprehensive school sites. And just a reminder for those that are listening, and I'll follow Ms. Connolly, for those that don't know Educanese, that we are comprehensive school sites are Acalanes, Campo Lindo, Las Lomas, and Miramonte. So all of our students attending comprehensive school sites would be attending in-person instruction. And that instruction will be held 5 days a week. And we would be utilizing the traditional AUHSD schedule, as I mentioned, with the anchor day on Monday and the 4 block days. As I also mentioned, the schedule may have to be adjusted just to accommodate whatever the current CDPH guidance requirements are. And that changes. We just got a CDPH guidance released 5 minutes before the board meeting, and I have perused it really quickly, and I don't see any changes to it that I can see that would affect this presentation, but that is the world that we're living in. So we are thinking that there may be a need to bring back our task force to quickly see. So we are making assumptions of the current CDPH guidance on the 3 feet in the classrooms, 6 feet outside. It's also 6 feet in the classrooms like music and choir, PE, and things like that. So that's what we're master scheduling on. Daily in-person attendance would be required. So we are truly moving back to our traditional model. Academy attendance would be in person, and again would be required, as it has been when it was truly effective and in place. And then our students would, of course, have a full offering of traditional courses that they have had and signed up for, and their and extracurricular offerings as we are allowed by whatever the guidance is currently in place. We've talked a lot about social and emotional well-being, especially in the context of the summer school and in our prior presentation. And we are, I want to bring this in this context as well, is that we and the rest of our staff will be tasked with a significant challenge of ensuring a well-developed and comprehensive plan for students' social emotional well-being. We really want to make sure that we have mental health and wellness supports in place to transition our students into our comprehensive high schools, into full in-person instruction 5 days a week. So we are working on expansion of our wellness center support systems. We need to examine what those needs are. As I mentioned in my prior presentation, those needs keep surprising us and not surprising us, but we keep evaluating and finding different needs as we assess what those are, and we need to respond with appropriate resources. So that's what we want to do. And we have summer programs that Ms. McNamara just covered, and we also want to provide year-long programming to address those mental health and wellness needs throughout those programs. We also need to recognize that social emotional learning is a huge component as we move forward and transition our students back. It's not necessary maybe for all students, but it is for a really large number of our students, for a significant population. So we really need to examine how we integrate those SEL practices into all of our classrooms and throughout the curricula. So we want to examine different systems of interventions based on those assessed needs. And then with regards to health and safety in our comprehensive school sites, we are again basing all of our recommendations on current, like today, CDPH guidelines, and that's how we're master scheduling, and that's how we're hiring, and that's how we're creating our classroom environments. So we are basing our classroom environments on 3-foot distancing from student to student, and 6 foot from student to teacher, because that's what the guideline says, the non-classroom environments of 6 feet of distancing in the non-classroom. Facility and classroom capacities have been taken into account as we master schedule and staff and develop that schedule. And it is anticipated at this moment that the masking will be mandatory at the schools. That's the announcements that we have heard. All existing safety protocols like screening and testing and all of those things will be further evaluated based on what the CDPH requirements are and their effectiveness. So we'll be examining those as we move forward in our planning. So that's the comprehensive plan. We really want to try to go back into sort of as normal days as possible of what it used to be. What that means is that to achieve that goal of providing that full remote or distance option for the students that may not be able to come back, is that we need to look at what that alternative program is. And I just want to remind the board that we currently have an alternative education program, and that is in the form of Akalani Center for Independent Study. And that what we are proposing for a 1 year implementing, well, hopefully it's 1 year, and hopefully this pandemic doesn't last on. I'm going to be hopeful it's 1 year for 21-22 school year that we add AUHSD Virtual Academy. And I want to spend a little bit of time of what that would look like. So the next few slides are very much relevant just for the virtual academy. So what would this virtual academy be organized as? Virtual academy would be offered as a distance learning or full remote option to students who are medically fragile or whose household would be put at a unique risk by in-person instruction. So again, we can't check for medical notes. But that's really who it's designed for. And it is a full remote programming, and it comes with only full remote options. It would be offered for us. We are thinking about it, offering it only for 21-22 school year. So it's a really short-term plan while we get out of the pandemic. Considering the uncertainty in the guidance, and the reason why we're offering it under alternative education, why it's couched under that umbrella, is that we all have seen the changes in CDPH guidances, the changes in our California Department of Education. They happen all the time, and we have constantly had to shift. We feel like we do not want to wait till July or August for the California Department of Education to tell us, or the legislation to come down and tell us, hey, here's your distance learning option, here's what it needs to look like, and then for us to scramble and do last minute planning for full remote option. When there's a California Ed Code that already gives us guidelines and options of how we can do that through alternative education. So that's why we are going through, hey, we already have an Ed Code where we can put in, following that Ed Code for alternative education, create a virtual academy, and we don't have to wait for last minute changes, and we can actually start planning and have a comprehensive plan now and really hit the ground running when the students are back. Certain program details. So the issue is that we are really creating a new school and a brand new program without really understanding how many students will be enrolled. So, which is a challenge. So some of those program details and 100% details will be really dependent on the number of students enrolled. So we do anticipate that there are going to be limitations to elective offerings, for example, at that program. We also, because this is a full virtual program, we are recommending that the students cannot participate in co and extracurricular activities because we have options for those already in existence. So students attending virtual academy are truly in a virtual setting only. So they do not participate in co and extracurricular at their home school that are in person. We could have virtual activities for them through the virtual school. And then any students with IEPs or special education and related services, all of those will be provided remotely as we did during distance learning. How would the model and schedule work? We would really be following our distance learning model that we did in the fall and the winter. We would look at it, make sure that we adjusted to the required instructional minutes under the alternative ed model, make sure that whatever didn't work, we adjust, and also adjust if we're going to be shifting some teachers that maybe teach there and at our comprehensive school sites, that we can align that. But it would really be a very similar schedule to that. Students would actually receive daily virtual synchronous and asynchronous instruction like they did in our distance learning model. And we would be following our AUHSD curriculum. Because we are anticipating a smaller number of students and not being able to offer a wide range of electives, we may have to supplement some of those electives through our online program of Fuel Education, which would still be monitored by our teachers, but it would have to be supplemented. And again, due to the size of the program, we do have to limit the number of course offerings. What we do want to make sure that we offer the courses that satisfy graduation and A through G requirements for college admissions. The way the student transcripts will be designated is that students would have it actually designated. The courses are taking at the virtual academy because you have to designate where the course is taken. However, we would allow that for all 12th graders, which were the only ones that would be affected, would actually graduate and receive the diploma from their home school, as opposed to, because we wouldn't have a graduation from the virtual academy. And then the enrollment process is we would follow the ed code, and how this works is that currently all of our students are enrolled in their home school, and families requesting for their students to enroll in the virtual academy would actually submit an online inter-district transfer, just as they do to go to ACIS or from school to school in a comprehensive school. Should this move forward this evening, I'd like to get this plan going ASAP. So our goal would be that on Friday, we actually send out a communication to the community explaining the model with the resources that explain our alternative programs and our comprehensive program for 21-22, and then give students 2 weeks or families 2 weeks to make a decision if they want to submit the inter-district transfer. Because then the enrollment size would actually give us a better idea of what that program could look like. We would then inform those families and say, hey, this is the program. These are the details of the program of what it could look like. And we would actually give them 7 days to make a change and a decision. We want to make sure that the families feel as comfortable as they can for what they signed up for. And I say this because if we have 50 students sign up for the program, it's very different than if I have 300 students sign up for a program or what that program looks like. Because it's a full virtual program, students would not be able to concurrently enroll in virtual academy in a comprehensive school site, but we do want to honor that the choice of being able to go back, but to avoid massive disruption in the programming and staffing, we would really like to do that at the semester break. Unless there's, of course, there's individual cases that happen throughout, should the space be available, but really the majority would be at a semester. And then student support, we want to make sure that all services that are supported are there. So if there's a need for counseling or wellness, but it's supported on a virtual format. And then for any students with special needs like IEPs or 504 plans, that would be all done through virtual programming. And then based on the ed code, the way the IEP placement works, the IEP team must actually meet and agree on a placement there and grant that placement, because if a student is not doing well in an online, the IEP team can actually, and if it's not a medical decision, then we need to walk through that. So an IEP actually has to agree on that. Okay, I just wanted to distinguish very briefly on the difference between Virtual Academy and ACIS, because we had a lot of discussion of is there a need for this with existence of independent study. And our independent study, truly should be for students that can time manage, that can manage their own learning, that can spend time independently, and independent study is in person. And they want to be in person next year as well. So not all students that need this virtual option are independent learners. And that's really what pushed us into having this additional model, is that independent study is for a particular student that opts into that model. And it may not be a model that works for a student that may need instruction every single day. So our virtual academy is different than the ACIS. But our ACIS students do not meet with their teachers daily. And when they do, they meet with them in person. And then virtual academy would meet actually every single day. And when they do, they meet virtually. And then our ACIS students, they do spend quite a bit of time working independently. Many of them are concurrently enrolled. in comprehensive school sites, actually about half of them, and some participate in and extracurricular activities, and ACIS is truly the enrollment of their choice, right? And that's not the option for the virtual academy. So that's kind of the main differences. So I just wanted to kind of summarize it, is that the comprehensive school sites, all students attend in-person instruction 5 days a week. And it's a traditional schedule with all instructional minutes, and it's daily in-person attendance. And then we have the alternative education, where we have the Akalani Center for Independent Study that's already there, which is truly an opt-in model. It's not compulsory, right? It's opt-in model for our students. It's in person, and it's highly individualized instruction. Students work independently throughout the week, where they meet with teachers minimum once a week. They could meet with them more, depending on their need. And where concurrent enrollment is allowed, and they are allowed to do extracurricular activities on campuses and so on, because they are an in-person campus. And then for the 21-22 school year, we would offer the virtual academy, which is also an opt-in model under the umbrella of alternative education. It's a distance learning model, which includes asynchronous and synchronous instruction. We would be taking daily virtual attendance. We would not have concurrent enrollment, and we would only have virtual activities for those students to connect, but they would not have ability to participate in person, extracurricular, and so on. So for our next steps in our planning, we would, pending this evening's discussion and any adjustments to the plan, we would really like to send out the information to our the community about our plan for 21-22 school year, and especially with the process of what the options are for the full remote. We are hoping to have the deadline for the transfer submissions by April 30th. I would hold a parent informational evening on Tuesday, April 20th at 6 p.m., which will be recorded for any parent who wants to listen in. I'll start a frequently asked questions to make sure that parents can access any resources and so on. And then we also want to provide a lot of information out there for parents that have clear understanding between Virtual Academy and ACIS, because I actually recognize, and this morning I met with a couple of ACIS teacher leaders, and I meet with ACIS staff tomorrow, and their coordinator, John Drury, is that actually many of our students may not want to go back to comprehensive, but they may not qualify for or may they not fit the virtual model, and ACIS actually may be the model they're looking to. So we really want to clearly demonstrate during the parent night and the resources that we push out on Friday, what is ACIS about? So that's what our meetings were this morning and tomorrow at ACIS, to really clear, like laser focus our communication and our vision and mission of ACIS, so that the community is clear on what that is and they understand their choices in front of them. And then I need to reassemble our task force about scheduling, how to realign, like what is our schedule for 21-22? What is the schedule at the virtual academy, should we run it? And what is the schedule at ACIS to ensure that their schedule is now aligned to whatever the revised schedule is. So there's a lot of work here to be done. And we would prefer not to do it in July because that's when maintenance is going to be building our classrooms. So, and then we need to also, the reason the deadline for April 30th is because we really need to develop that program based on the enrollment. And that enrollment in Virtual Academy actually has a domino effect on the enrollment at our comprehensives and the staffing. So it's a really huge domino effect that just starts rolling on Friday. So it is our recommendation, and this is really what the action is in front of you, is that our comprehensive school sites return to full instructional model with 5 days a week of in-person instruction under the derivation of 1920 school day schedule. Alternative Schools Virtual Academy centralized program run with full distance learning instruction, and Akalani Center for Independent Study is full in-person instruction per the structure of our independent study programming. So I will happily answer questions. Yes.
Thank you, Aida. yeah, clarifying questions first because they have public comment as well.
Yep, this is just a clarifying question. So just to get this right, for Virtual Academy, this is something that any parent can decide they want to transfer to for next year. There's no physician's note requirement or anything like that.
We are not allowed to ask for a physician note, so yes, correct.
Okay, okay, interesting.
And it would also be, it doesn't have to be a student physician note, right? It could be a healthy student, but it could be effect on the parent at home or somebody somebody at home. But the need is to have a fully isolated virtual environment.
Okay. We have one public comment from Ms. Stephanie Barmer. If she could raise her hand.
Mr. Barmer may be speaking, but he's muted maybe.
Yes, Stephanie, are you there? Maybe let's leave her there for the moment and continue with board discussion. So discussion from board members, Nancy.
This is more of a question, but it's not necessarily a clarifying question. I have a couple. One is in your presentation, you mentioned that the current guidelines for there's 3 feet for the regular classrooms, but you said 6 feet for other things like choir, band, orchestra. Do we anticipate we're going back to full ability to have those classes?
I hope so, but and John, you may know more about this, but right now, I think if the tier system goes away, that may change. I'll defer to John on that. My understanding is the way I'm reading the guidelines right now, us being in we were just allowed to come back even to sing or play in person indoor, 30 minutes at a time, 6 feet apart. But I'm not sure when that gets lifted to like full allowance.
Yeah, so if the governor proceeds with the June 15th elimination with the tiers based on those criteria of vaccination availability as well as hospitalization, we do anticipate, so the tiers will move out, but we do anticipate there'll be some guidance for schools, and we're not sure what to expect on the choir and the band. We've been pushing the state to look at some of the other states, just as they did with sports, that have been more permissive and have not seen transmission take place. And we think that was part of the reason that they suddenly got bumped into the low contact indoor sports and were then allowed to do the limited activity that Aida mentioned when we got to orange. We're hopeful that the data will suggest that it can be more permissive for those programs, as well as in terms of indoor performances. There's guidance coming out on indoor performances, and we hope that will continue to progress as we understand, have greater understanding, as well as the vaccination rates go up.
Do we have space in our rooms for 6-foot spacing?
Aida, can you speak to that? Because I know you've been.
Well, not for some of the larger ensembles.
That's what I wondered.
So we could put some of the ensembles in the theaters, but then they're at the same time as the choir. Some of the smaller ensembles we can clearly, like choir ensembles, we can sing in the theaters, but not the bigger ones. So it depends on the size of the ensemble. And especially for the instrumental music, we really, right now, we could not combine them, actually.
I was afraid of.
Yeah, this is more of a comment, but for those who might know who to lobby on this, is we start school 4 days minus 4 months from now. I certainly hope, I think we all hope by then that we'll be a lot further along than we are now in terms of the COVID-19 world. Hopefully we'll have herd immunity by that time. But this X number of feet, I mean, it just doesn't really work in high schools. And it would be so nice. I simply said, try to keep the kids as far apart as you can, or whenever you can. And if they got to wear a mask, fine. But I just think this 3 feet or 6 feet or 2 feet or whatever, it just isn't realistic in comprehensive high schools. Because you're either going to be constantly on. You can kind of do in the classroom. Even there's going to be kind of hard if you have classrooms of 28 or plus. So that's my hope, that this specific feat is a thing of the past.
Bob, we are planning for 3 feet in our master scheduling.
No, we have to.
It's certainly more expensive. We're using some of the one-time dollars to support that. Or we're planning on using some of the one-time dollars pending board approval before June 1st to support that, so that if it is a 3 feet, we can do it. But we have a degree of optimism that if things progress like we believe they will, there's not some new variant that's problematic with the vaccine. Even with the vaccine, we think, or we have some optimism that will go away, but we're planning for it to be in place.
That's a prudent thing to do. I was just saying that, in terms of, I'm sure I was making it very clear to the powers to be, and that's all. Thanks.
I've got a clarifying question and then a question. So for the clarifying question, if you're in the virtual academy and you're a senior and you graduate, I know that you're graduating from like your home school. Does that include also being able to walk in the promotion? Oh, you're muted.
I just muted myself. We haven't gotten to the planning time, but that was our initial, is that, you've done 3 years with your regular school and you are owned. We owe you a graduation ceremony, and there is no ceremony from the virtual academy, is that we would have you graduate. And that includes the ceremony from your virtual academy, should your medical condition, and should you choose to do so, allow you to.
Totally. And then my second question was, I know that the district has started to really address equity and doing all of our equity lessons in our cohorts with our cohort academy. Is there a plan, or has that been on the radar in like the virtual academy, to make sure that culture building and equity building is still there?
Yes. Just don't know if everybody's hearing the teapot noise.
That's probably my headphones again, sorry.
Okay. Well, whatever we do at the comprehensive school sites with regards to the equity lessons, I would assume that I'm going to say that we would do at the virtual academy with regards to the inclusion of equity lessons. We can't offer all the programming with regards to how many electives we offer, AP courses, or the wide range of electives. But we need our students to, just like at ACIS, we do not offer as many electives as we do at the comprehensives, but we do teach the equity lessons at ACIS just like we do at the comprehensives. So yes, I would assume what that would look like. Now with regards to the cohorts, that's a whole different, a cohort academy is a part of this schedule, which is not on our traditional schedule. So those are different things that we would need to discuss on when are those lessons being taught as part of which curricula, and how are we implementing those lessons as we move forward.
So Aida, I think this is a terrific presentation, and thank you for a thoughtful virtual academy, creating yet another new thing based on all that you've learned. I'm going to raise an obnoxious start time question, whether or not the group has gotten to that, knowing that we need to stay compliant with our, with this, the law that was passed around the later start time. And we've had previous discussions about potentially doing that earlier. What's our process for thinking about the later start time, which we've gotten really positive feedback from our students on?
John, do you want me to take that, or do you want to take that?
I can talk
Yeah.
about it a little bit, and maybe you can follow up.
Sure.
So the law for 830 actually goes into effect not next school year,
Right.
but the following school year. Our initial plans when that law came through was to work and do a revision to our school day schedule to change a year early to the 830. With everything that's been going on, and this is something that the schedule is something that is negotiated with our bargaining units. With everything going on, we've kind of put that on pause, but there might be opportunity for next year. We have to do it the following year. We'll have that on our mind if we can, but there's a lot that we're working on. So Aida, I don't know if you want to
I think that's it. I mean, if we can somehow do it, I think everybody would be appreciative. If we can do it without a drastic change. And as John mentioned, it is something that we negotiate.
Actually, that was part of my question. But part of my question comes at very much a timing thing, because the start time for our schools affects the school bus program, which the La Miranda school bus program is only for 2 of our schools. County Connection's different, but the likelihood of signups is much earlier than like close to the beginning of school. So I'm going on the assumption that we're going with the traditional, our usual schedule for now, at least. So if there are changes coming up, please let me know, or let me know so I can let the program know as soon as possible. I had a second sort of comment or question. I understand why we want to know soon enough to do planning, but I do have a question. Is April 30th enough time for parents to get back and make a choice, given everything that's been going on? So, I mean, it's not a question that I can answer. It's just a question that I think needs to be asked.
I understand and it's just that we have to staff it. We have to staff the school. We have to staff the program, and see what the effects are at the comprehensives on the staffing. And the longer we wait, we may end up not having staff, and that's the issue. That's really the issue. It's not about not wanting to plan in June. I mean, we all work year round, and we all work year round, even though it is important that we do this planning when we have our teacher expertise here. And I don't think that those groups are going to be meeting here in July. So I do want to meet with our committees of teachers in May and to really do the schedule planning thoughtfully. But the staffing is my number one issue. Because I have staffing at all comprehensive and planning. I know Julie's budgetary projections are all dependent on this as well, which is, I'm sure, very important to her, to me, a minor issue in comparison to if I don't have human bodies to teach these students quality instruction, there's nothing more important.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy, I was going to say I'm sensitive to that same question as well. I mean, it seems like, but the way I guess I think about it, I think the families are going to feel like it's an abrupt decision anytime before August 1st. You know, they would want to wait all the way until the end to make a decision, but obviously we can't plan school that late, and so again, I think it's going to be abrupt for them, but I think it's going to be abrupt no matter when we
Right.
ask for a decision.
And I don't disagree with that. I kind of wanted to mention it, kind of wanted to bring it out so we could discuss it. And I think in a certain sense, to try to make it clear, I think it's clear in what Aida presented, but clear that the virtual academy is not the same as I chose to do distance learning this past year. It's a conscious choice that you are not interacting with people. You're not going to do co-curricular, you're not going to do sports, you're not going to do the other things. You're choosing it because you can't, or feel strongly that you don't want to interact with folks. Not, well, just this would be kind of the thing I think I'll do for until things get better. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, that is a fair assessment. And I would have to say is that, I mean, just like what we just did with changes in cohorts, there are always exceptions throughout the summer, but it's space if there's space. If we have to change an entire master schedule, that's hard. But if there's space and there are compelling reasons, we can see why that would be, why we would want to. ACIS enrollment is it's a rolling enrollment really throughout the year based on student needs. So that's a different option too, for those that need, I'm not ready for in-person, but I actually don't have a medical condition, right? Or medical need. So that's another option too, that we can clarify. And that enrollment is not such a must tell me by now, right? Because that program already exists. So that's also another safe option that we need to know that exists in our camp. And it's a really good, solid option. So.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions from the board? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The only thing I would just say to just reinforce that point is, I think whatever that communication that goes out to the families, it's got to be like, lights and confetti to you got to respond to this kind of thing, because people are gonna, obviously they don't pay attention to their emails.
Simi Johal, our TOSA earlier, already sent me some infographics about ACIS that are, I mean, lights and confetti galore. I just need to make sure the virtual academy is clearly spelled out as well. Yes.
And we will make sure the subject line brings some attention to it, because we track the readership of our communications, and when we send it out to all parents, it's about 8,500, because it's often 2 in a household. And when we will get open rates above 80-85% when the subject line is telling you need to open this, which is pretty good when you have. But more typically, we're in the 50 to 60, Dr. Severson. So your concern is valid. And the school sites, the principals will follow up with additional communication, because some people are more likely to open up from a familiar principal than they are from Ms. Glimmy or myself. Although announcing the Acalanes High School principal tonight, that will be about 80%, because that will draw attention. But your point is super important. We need people to know that this option is there, particularly with the tight timeline.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the 2021-2022 school year plan as presented by staff to return to its district in-person instructional model, and for the district to offer a centralized district learning option for students with medical or other unique needs?
Preston Nibley, so moved.
Kristen Connolly, second.
And Mr. Nibley, I assume you support the motion?
That's correct.
And Ms. Richmond, if you could please call the roll.
Yes, roll call vote to approve the 2021-2022 proposed school plan. Ms. Connolly.
Aye.
Mr. Grove.
Aye.
Mr. Hockett.
A big aye.
Ms. Konzerski.
Aye, especially to
And
the
Dr.
blah, blah, blah.
Severson. Sorry,
Aye.
as outlined.
That vote was unanimous.